We're experiencing some technical difficulties, so we'll move on to our next speaker. Our seventh speaker is Ian Richmond, a leading voice in refugee advocacy and a founder of the Refugee Action Coalition. For decades, he has worked on lines of activism, challenging unjust immigration policies and refugees seeking safety in Australia. Please welcome Ian Richmond.
அகதிகள் ஆதரவில் முன்னணி குரலாகவும் அகதிகள் நடவடிக்கை கூட்டணியின் நிறுவன உறுப்பினராகவும் உள்ள இயன் ரிச்சர்ட் ஆஸ்திரேலியாவின் பாதுகாப்பு தேடும் அகதிகளை ஆதரிப்பதிலும் முன்னணியில் பணியாற்றுகிறார். இயன் ரிச்சர்ட் அவர்களை உரையாற்ற அழைக்கின்றோம்.
Thanks very much for that very generous introduction. Like others, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and recognise their struggle for self-determination and justice as we celebrate tonight the struggle for Tamils for self-determination and justice in Sri Lanka. I'm very happy to be here tonight. I was here last year. Last year wasn't just a sombre occasion because of what we gathered to commemorate, but we had just been 129 days outside Tony Black's office. We used to chant outside that office, one day longer, one day stronger. We didn't always feel that we were stronger at the end of those 129 days, but I'm very happy to say, that many of the people who were outside did pay tribute to the fact that it was the vast bulk of the Tamils, the Tamil Council, that provided the backbone for that 129 days demonstration outside Tony Black's office, which has resulted in the fast track people starting that process of actually getting permanent visas. So I'm very happy to meet a few people on the way in here that already have got their permanent visas. So there's about 3,000 Tamils actually, over 30% of the fast track victims, and we've got about 2,000 visas that have been granted so far, and we hope to see the others subsequently. And there's a lesson from that. I think it's an historic lesson that protest works. I mean, I don't think we should accept the idea that somehow or other the visas just falling from the sky. They came from 14 years of resistance, 14 years of organising, 14 years of protest, and we've still got a little bit to go. I don't know whether any of the transitory people here, the ex-Nauru, ex-Manus people are here tonight, but that's our next task, and we haven't forgotten the fact that it's not just fast track, it's all the people who were the victims of Manus Island and Nauru who still need permanent visas, and they'll be the next tab off the rank in terms of the protest if that's what we need. There's an old saying in Australia, I'm sure there's some kind of equivalent in Tamil, that the squeaky wheel gets oil, and I think we're going to make sure that we're going to keep squeaking and keep squeaking and keep squeaking until we get to justice for all the fast track people, all the transitory people, and to deal much more fundamentally, which is what I say briefly about that although we've had something of a success in terms of the fast track victims, and they have been appalling victims of racist legislation, of a very, very specific determination to discriminate against refugees, and boat people. And the reality is that hasn't gone away. That the Migration Act remains a vicious piece of racist legislation that needs fundamental reform. I mean, the Section 501, the section that allows people to be jailed, for visas to be cancelled on character grounds, on security grounds, is something which is going to continue to affect and does continue to affect the deportation laws. The Migration Act affects everybody who's on bridging visa E's, bridging visa R's, and that's something which still we're not going to have justice in this country until the Migration Act is fundamentally changed. And the evidence of that, I think, is the fact that there is now one of the 5 people who have been removed under the deportation laws to Nauru. One of them is a Tamil boat arrival. And I think that says everything. That it is great that people are going to get permanent visas, but the struggle isn't going to end there until we actually get rid of all the racist legislation that we face. And other people have said here as well, but I think we see a reflection of that official racism, if you like, that comes from the Labor Party's attitude to the deportation bill, that comes from the scapegoating of refugees, of international students. We see it much more explicitly from Andrew Hastie and the Liberal Party now campaigning openly in terms of against what they call mass immigration, and it has resulted in things like the March for Australia, open organising in the streets of Sydney and other cities around Australia against the idea of refugees and migrants. This is something that we continue to actually organise against. So I wanted to use take that opportunity to pay tribute to your struggle and to the role that the Tamil Refugee Council played in the struggle against for fast track for some justice for refugees, and to spell out the fact that that struggle hasn't gone away, and it's still the fact that the first votes that were turned around by the Labor government when it won in 2022 were Tamil votes. The first thing they did was to make sure that the Sri Lankan government had greater surveillance capacity to stop those who attempting to flee persecution. And if anyone hasn't looked at the boards here, that horror hasn't gone away. The human rights abuses in Sri Lanka haven't stopped, and yet we see a government which is more interested in maintaining relations with those human rights abusers than they are in standing up for human rights, either internationally or at home. And it was shocking, as someone said it before. I'm probably going to get the pronunciation right, but it's wrong. But the Shamani, where so many victims of the Tamil genocide have been unearthed, and it is a reminder to see the people in Sri Lanka still marching for justice, still marching for the disappeared, still marching for their loved ones, is an indication that that struggle hasn't gone away, still reverberates in Sri Lanka. And so we learn a lot from history. As I said, we learn that protest works. We learn history and look back to understand how best we can keep on fighting. Those slogans, the one day longer, one day stronger, is going to remain part of what's going to be important if we are going to see, to fight against the racism, to fight against the injustice in Australia and in Sri Lanka. So solidarity with the struggle in Sri Lanka, solidarity with the struggle in Australia.
Speakers, delegates, and everyone participating in this conference. The 10th of this month marks International Human Rights Day, declared by the United Nations. This day exists to remind the nations that human rights and the fundamental rights must shape daily life. Yet the Iram Tamil people still cannot enjoy these rights, even in the 21st century. Instead, they continue to face systematic violation. During Cyclone Hitwa, the north and east were hit hardest. One reason was that the Sri Lankan government failed to provide the warning instruction in Tamil. This was not an accident. It reflects a pattern of neglect and discrimination that has shaped state policy for decades. Last month, a Buddha statue was illegally installed in Ringamana, the Tamil capital. This was happened with support of Sri Lankan police. This is part of broader effort to occupy the Tamil ancient land and erase Tamil heritage. These acts are a tool of cultural genocide designed to enforce singular Buddhist dominance. United Nations has already recognized that the Sri Lankan government committed series of human rights violations during and before the final phase of the war in 2009. Several resolutions have followed. Yet 16 years later, the victims have received no justice. This year, the UN chose our daily essentials as a theme for International Human Rights Day. It highlights how human rights guide our everyday life, even when we do not see it. As UN Human Rights Commissioner Walker Turk said, it links human rights to our needs, fears, hopes, benefits. For European people, accountability remained absent. Justice remained out of reach. No mechanism has been created by the UN or the international community to protect the fundamental right of the Tamils or to protect future abuses. Tamil have repeatedly called for the Sri Lanka to be referred to the International Criminal Court (ICC) or for a special tribunal similar to those established for the Rwanda and Yugoslavia. The international community has not acted. The UN framework for genocide prevention includes investigation, accountability, and the responsibility to protect victims. It also supports international court and evidence gathering system. It recognizes that the genocides begin with human rights violation. Human Rights Day exists to affirm the rights of all people. But the affirmation means nothing without justice and accountability. The mass graves now being uncovered in the north are not isolated incidents. They are connected to a history that stretches from Black July to Muliwaika. The mothers of the disappeared have protested for more than 3,000 days asking for answers. They have no answers, no apologies, no justice. After Muliwaika, the United Nations own internal review acknowledged it failed to protect the Tamil people. 16 years later, the same failure is repeated itself. One of the core problems is that Tamil do not yet have a unified mechanism capable of pushing the international community to act. Accountability does not happen automatically. History shows that it requires sustained pressure and organized leadership. Today, we lack Elam Tamil organization willing and able to provide that push. On this Human Rights Day, we call the Sri Lankan government to stop violation against Elam Tamil people, release all political prisoners held without due process, and reveal the fate of the forcibly disappeared. The global Tamil community must stand together on these demands. Today, we remember the victims and survivors of human rights violation and genocide committed against the Tamil people. We ask Tamil Elam, the Indian Ocean region, and the world to unite in support of justice, dignity, and lasting peace for our people. Thank you.